Hi, I'm Ebony. I'm one of the speech pathologists here at Prosper, and this month we're focusing on speech pathology topics for our vlogs. And so I wanted to talk to you today about one of the most common questions I get from parents, which is about late talkers when they have a toddler. So I know that that's a topic that a lot of parents have questions about, and there might be quite a bit of information or confusing information out there about what a late talker is and how you should approach it. So I wanted to try and talk about that today and give you a little bit more information. So for parents with young children, you're often watching your child's development and perhaps comparing them against other siblings or against other children in their playgroups or in their daycare. And maybe you have some concerns about your child's talking and where they compare to other children around them. So when we're talking about a late talker specifically, what we mean is a child who is saying fewer than 50 words by age 2, and by age 2 to 2.5 years old, they're not combining words into 2-word phrases. So 2-word phrases would be things like more bicky, go daddy, push swing, that kind of thing is what we mean by 2-word phrases. So our late talkers haven't reached that milestone by that age. And so that's a cause for concern and something that we take seriously as speech pathologists because we really want to make sure that these children don't fall behind because there's so much language learning that happens in those early years. Those children might understand language fairly well. You might find that they follow your instructions well, or they seem to show that they're understanding when you're talking to them. They might use other means to communicate. So these children often may point or use their face to communicate rather than using their words because they're struggling to use their words to communicate. In terms of what might cause a late talker, I think it's really important for parents to know that delayed language or delayed speech isn't your fault. There's lots of things that can impact a child's language development. There are genetic factors. Sometimes things about the environment can also impact the child's talking. Sometimes it's child specific. It may be an indicator that there's a condition that the child might have, like autism or an intellectual disability, but that's not always the case. Sometimes children are delayed in their language and they don't have any other condition coinciding with that. It doesn't mean by any necessity that your child is not intelligent or that they can't catch up with some support. One of the things that parents sometimes say to me or have perhaps heard is that boys tend to talk later than girls and that it's normal for a boy to be a late talker, but the research just doesn't show this. Boys are only a month or two behind in terms of developmental milestones in terms of communication compared to girls. So we don't expect a boy at that age, 2.5, to have fewer than 50 words and not be combining phrases. So if you are a mum of a boy and you've heard this, that it's fine for a boy not to be talking at that age, I would go seek a professional opinion and get some support because we don't expect that. Speech does develop differently in different children, but in general we know that most children should be saying more than 50 words and combining 2-word phrases by that age. The other thing that parents often ask me is, should we just wait and see? Maybe they'll just catch up, or a friend of ours has said that they, had a child in a similar position and they just caught up when they went to school. And while some children may catch up, I guess the reason why we don't advocate or we don't really support this wait and see approach is because you really can't guarantee, or you can't know for certain if your child is going to catch up without that professional support. And the risk that you run is that your child falls even further behind. There is a huge language growth between those years of like 2 to 4, where a child's vocabulary grows exponentially. And so for a late talker child, if they're behind, they're missing out on so much learning and so much language that by the time a few years has passed, they're now incredibly behind their peers. Whereas if we catch it early and we give that child support when they're younger, we can minimize that gap and we can help them catch up faster. The other thing that I see is that these young children, while you're waiting and seeing, are often really frustrated because they want to communicate and they know they're having difficulties, but they don't know what else to do. And sometimes we do see a lot of frustration or anxiety growing in the child, or even problem behaviors like hitting or biting, because that child is just struggling to communicate and function in their day-to-day life and they don't really know what else to do. So we definitely suggest that if you have a child who fits that criteria, who seems to be a late talker, that you get in to see a speech therapist and you get support for your child as early as possible, just to minimize those possible outcomes and just to help them get back on track as soon as possible. So if you have concerns about your child, I definitely recommend you speak to your pediatrician or GP. You can seek a referral through Medicare for a speech pathologist, or you can reach directly out to a speech pathologist, or you can reach out to us here at Prosper to speak to one of our speech pathologists. But I definitely recommend you get that support as early as possible, as soon as you have concerns, and see what kind of support your child might need. If you do have any further questions or you are concerned about your child, please feel free to reach out to us here. We're always happy to help answer any further questions that you might have about your child's specific circumstances.